Hello, everybody, and welcome to Loyalty versus Retention, Trends to Level Up Your Customer Engagement. I'm your host, Skip Federa, and I'm a fractional CMO, primarily with B2B SaaS companies who are transitioning from startup to scale up. The benefit of a fractional CMO is that you get the marketing leader that you need to plan your growth and lead your team while being able to spend your budget against your marketing rather than on your marketer. Before we go any further, I would like to take the time to thank our sponsors, without which none of this would be possible. So this webinar is put together and brought to you by Holistic Email Marketing and Iterable. Iterable is a cross-channel platform that powers unified customer experiences and empowers marketers to create, optimize, and measure every interaction across the entire customer journey. With Iterable, brands individualized marketing touchpoints that earn engagement, solidify trust, and galvanize loyal customer brand relationships. Brands like Zoopla, Calm, Unidays, and Strava choose Iterable to power world-class customer experiences throughout the entire lifecycle. Now, with customer loyalty and retention top of the agenda for us today, you can discover Iterable's top tips for putting this into practice with meaningful moments by heading over to their recent blog, How to Win Customers' Hearts and Brand Loyalty. And a link for that should pop up here in a second. Now, today is a once-in-a-lifetime day. It's actually a once-in-a-forever day. 22/02/2022 is, for the geeks among you, it's a palindrome, which means it can be read from right to left or left to right, and it'll be the same thing. And it's also, and this is a word I didn't know until this morning, an ambigram. In other words, you could take it and flip it upside down, and it still reads the right way. So not only is today a once and forever day, but we have a once-in-a-lifetime panel that we've put together for this discussion. Today, we're going to be joined by Mark Ford, Head of CRM at AllSaints, Rasmus Dahl-Jessen, Automation Manager for Global Marketing at Pandora, Jessica Hooper, Senior Customer Marketing Manager at Iterable, Adiola Sol, Senior Consultant at Holistic Email Marketing, and Kath Pei, bestselling author, award-winning marketer, and founder of Holistic Email Marketing. Now, if you have any questions for the panel, remember to enter them in the Q&A area to the right-hand side of your screen. Also, we're not expecting any issues, but should you lose picture or sound first, try refreshing the page. That usually clears things up. And if not, just reach out on the chat, and the production team will be able to help you out. Now, while we're on the topic of best-selling authors, we have a special treat for you. One of you today will be winning a Kindle copy of Kath's book. That's right, one lucky member. Oh, sorry, that was a little cheesy. Let me try that again. Sorry. Yeah, that's right, one lucky member. I'll even pin myself. There you go. One lucky member of you is going to win a Kindle copy. That's the physical copy. It's a great book. Holistic Email Marketing, a practical philosophy to revolutionize your business and delight your customers. Okay, let's get started. So during COVID, consumer behavior changed. Not only did consumers start to shop differently, but they became more willing to try new things, try new brands. Now, maybe it was because of the tremendous disruption. Maybe it was due to income uncertainty. Maybe it was because they just had too much time in their hands. At the height of the pandemic, McKinsey reported that 63% of UK customers and 73% of US customers had tried new shopping behaviors, and about 80% of those plan to continue that behavior after the pandemic. The reason behind these consumers trying new brands was value followed by availability, then quality. The decrease in brand loyalty has continued as we come out of the pandemic. 30 to 40% of consumers, mostly millennials and Gen Zers, continue to switch brands. They have high expectations of the brands they support and look for company values who ethically source quality products. So, what does this mean for retention and loyalty? Well, that's what we're here to find out. So, Kath, let's start with you. Just so we're all speaking the same language, what's the difference between retention and loyalty?
Okay, yeah, great question. So retention is simply the fact of bringing them back, right? And when I say simply, I don't mean simply because I find that actually a lot of brands don't spend enough time and effort and concentration on actually retention. There's been a lot of on acquisition, but not so much on retention. And retention, of course, is where your low-hanging fruit is, and also where your biggest, sort of a segment of or biggest availability for your competitors to come in and poach your audience if you're not doing it well. Okay. But loyalty is something different. Loyalty is retention on steroids, right? Because we're talking about they keep coming back. They keep coming back. And not only that, once someone is loyal to you, they're going to be your advocate. So they'll be verbally recommending you. They'll be doing a tweet and saying, look at this. They'll be doing an Instagram and, a picture of wearing your product, whatever it is. So these guys are loyal. And you can count on them. Again, you don't want to be taking them for granted, and that's why you need to be recognizing them, treating them special, and doing everything like that. But that's the main difference. Just because they're coming back doesn't necessarily mean that they're loyal, that they're going to stay with you. They kind of have to go to the next extreme, and that's why, or the next step, and that's why, engaging, nurturing, and retaining throughout, and then bringing them to a point of loyalty, that is an art, and that's very important for businesses to do. And I don't know that enough brands do that.
Okay. Well, we've got two brands with us today. Ras, Mark, you both work for brands. Ras, let's start with you. How do you view loyalty and retention within your brands? Within your brand?
Yeah, well, if I were to pick up where Kath led off, we in Pandora have very ambitious goals for when we want to use 100% recycled silver, as we do understand that this is a consumer need that's growing. And we actually have a goal to be doing that 100% within the next few years. What I think I could add on top of that, just to pitch into one of our very recent campaigns, is of course that we partner up with some of the most loyalty achieving companies in the world. One of them is Disney, and just recently we launched a collaboration with what is, I assume, the largest, one of the largest at least franchises in the world, Marvel.
Is it Marvel?
Yeah.
I love the collection.
It was a crazy launch, launch party as well, I can tell you. And what I think if I
sorry, what's a party? Did you say anything about a party? What is that?
I'll send you.
It was a socially distanced party, right, Rasmus?
Yeah. So, yeah, sorry guys, I'm sitting in Denmark. Everything is open here. Sorry.
Okay, gloat away. Go on.
Yeah, gloat away. But how do you sort of move that, or how do you move from retention to loyalty, right? Because building retention into loyalty is really, how do we make sure that what creates loyalty? Let's say it's recycled silver and it's the Marvel fan base. How do you build what you can only call your retention program into loyalty program? I think that's really about defining what are the key segments that you actually want to achieve this with, right? You'll never achieve complete loyalty from your entire base, or even have all of your customers return to you. That's a fact. We all know that. And what you need to also just recognize is that it's not always about CLV, right? It's about finding that one identifier that you can at least say, okay, there's a significant batch of people here that we know if we target them at this time with this size of an offer, and then add on top that things that makes them loyal, recycling silver, loving Captain America, whatever that might be, at the right time. That's really where we build from retention to loyalty. And we try to make sure that it's not all about retention programs that just target people based on whatever we think is the right time just before they churn all the time, but actually try and build, I guess, that's more long-term relationship that Kath was talking about.
Sorry, I was on mute. Excellent, Ras. Thanks for that. Mark, do you have anything you want to chuck in there and add?
Yeah, well, I think at AllSaints, being a high street brand, or kind of like we're constantly, someone described it the other day as street fighting, and I'm not sure if I don't know. I'd question whether loyalty even exists. I think I kind of sign up to that, that kind of feeling that you're as good as your last gig, right? You're constantly having to prove yourself. And when you mentioned, Rasmus mentioned Disney there, and I kind of thought, well, yeah, there are some brands that probably do have that kind of like magic dust and do create that loyalty. But I suspect for most brands and most marketers that just driving that, retention rate and that repurchase rate is a prize big enough itself. We probably have three facets of how we would tackle that. So loyalty is not loyalty is not a huge conversation within AllSaints, I would suggest. But the first facet for us is about relevancy, and so that's our personalization strategy. And obviously, if you are fundamentally, if you're relevant to someone, that inherently drives engagement. It inherently drives next purchase conversion. And so with our AI product recommendations, our automation that drives the lifecycle comms, we have some sort of like leather is obviously a big category for AllSaints. So we have leather care adverts, emails, if you've purchased a leather product, price drop and recommendations and all of those things. So really trying to build that relevancy and that affinity with the customer. I think specifically on sort of VIP and loyalty activity, our thinking behind it has really sort of been that rewards cost money, right? Everything needs to wash its face. And so what that means is that customers have to have a high purchase frequency to cover any cost that you're investing in points or widgets or whatever. So what that inherently means is that loyalty is only commercially viable on customers with a high purchase frequency. Now, there are brands like Starbucks and Tesco's that sell product that have a really high frequency of needs. You can go into Starbucks and Tesco 5 times a week. So loyalty is commercially feasible there for a much greater proportion of their customer bases. But for a fashion brand, and for many brands, the frequency of need is often a lot lower. And so what this means is that loyalty will only really be commercially viable on a much smaller proportion of your base. And so these are the principles that have really driven our thinking. And to be candid, guys, I've been AllSaints would freely admit this. I've been at AllSaints for 4 years now. When I first joined, we were, kind of like starting at a point zero, and only last year, so at the end of year 3, did we actually start looking at loyalty and VIP activity. So that just goes to show you where it came in our priorities in terms of tasks to tackle. For us, it's I can freely tell you that because it's fairly typical. Our 12-month buyer file, 70% of those people have purchased once, and at the other end of the spectrum, we've got about 1.5% of people that have purchased more than 8 times in that year. So what that means, right, is that talking to loyalty to our base, it's wholly irrelevant to 98.5% of our base, because they don't buy enough for us to be able to invest in any money to reward them. And it's actually, commercially unfeasible for us to do that. So we have focused much more. So last year we defined what a VIP was, and it was based on purchase frequency and spend metrics. And we executed our first piece of activity. And this year we're going to build on that. But we're much more in the lines of, we're certainly not, because of the points that I just said, we're certainly not, employing this sort of like huge loyalty platform with bells and whistles that, takes budget and resource to maintain, because it's only relevant to a small proportion of our base. So we're kind of like much more in the lines of the, what's kind of called low cost emotional benefits. So, the airlines do it really well. Priority boarding for their best customers. It costs them nothing, but the customers that receive it, it feels really good for those customers. So, the retail equivalent of that is early access to sales and new collections. So we're going to be moving into that. And just some, even some, I mean, fairly old, it might seem fairly old-fashioned, but things like free prize draws and stuff like that. So we did a free prize draw to win £1,000 new season wardrobe in September last year. So whilst obviously only 1 or 2 people win, you communicate to the selected audience that they've been chosen, and they feel that recognition and they feel that warmth, even if they don't actually win that prize. So that's where we kind of are with regard to VIP/loyalty. And then there's sorry.
No, I was going to say it's really interesting because the point that you made about 70% of your database only ever having purchased once, right? Now, that is so typical. And whenever we go in, I mean, we're really fortunate at Holistic. We've got AllSaints and Pandora as our, clients. So that's great. So we get to work with amazing brands and find out what it is that they do. But we also work with a lot of smaller retailers as well. And you know what? It's the same across the board, whether you're a small retailer, a large retailer. This seems to be 70%, 80%, the old 80-20 Pareto principle tends to come into play. And the fact of the matter is, one of the first things we ever do is we identify that and we go and say, what are you doing about it? And the majority of them aren't doing anything, even though it's actually a very, very obvious challenge. It's it's low-hanging fruit. These guys have bought from you once. Let's go and let's put a second purchase program in place to really try and get them happening, and that's just the beginning of that retention. And then over time, then that's, because it's a case of, if we just leave consumers to do whatever they want to do, they're going to do whatever they want to do. Whereas I believe that we need to be the director of their customer journey.
Inspiring them.
Inspiring them. We're email. We're a push channel.
We will.
I'm joking. Passive aggressively talking, encouraging. But
we're email. We're a push channel, right? So yeah. So Jessica, as far as you guys go at Iterable, you have a lot of retailers and a lot of other non-retailers as well. What do you see the makeup? Do you see something like that? One-time customers are making up, 70 or so % of the database?
Yeah, I would say, similarly, if they're making up about, I don't know, anywhere from 60 to 70% of the database. So it's definitely not, uncommon to have that.
Yeah.
So, and then
I think it's very interesting. Oh.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that, to sort of pick up again, both on what Mark but also what Cass said. Then it's also about finding out what products it is that drive that loyalty, right? For Pandora, the example is very obvious, right?
Yes.
We do bracelets and charms, but we also do a lot of rings and earrings and things that have little to do with charms. And we have a lot of one-time ring purchases, and those usually don't end up with the highest customer lifetime value, I can tell you. Right. Whereas if we somehow recognize their need for a bracelet at the right time, and we upsell them to a bracelet or cross them to a bracelet, well, few people only buy a bracelet and only add one charm, right? And we usually add more charms. And that's how we also get them into the category of the people who we consider real Pandora loyalists, right? Which is the bracelet wearers, the people who love the charms from Marvel, from our own designs from Star Wars and so forth. So again, building retention into loyalty is really about trying to recognize the right time to make them a purchaser of the product that actually makes them loyal.
Yeah, and I would also say that I think the concept of loyalty just needs to be flipped on its head a little bit, because as Mark said earlier, there isn't necessarily a loyalty program in place. It's more about retention and just kind of focusing on the core audience. But I would actually argue that what you're doing is, in fact, loyalty building as well. Loyalty is just a word, but as a concept, it's not just about rewards. It's also about providing helpful marketing, useful information to your customers that sets you out from your competitors. So when someone is buying the beautiful biker leather jacket that I really have always wanted since I was like 21, having
dreams
those
can come true.
I pray to the Lord, sweet Jesus, but it happens this year. But having those emails that one shows me how to care for my leather, and then also, I guess a month later, how do I style my amazing leather jacket? And did you know that your beautiful leather jacket also comes in a buttery, soft, goat leather, or something that I could get that's really multi-purpose for autumn and winter, just depending on the time that I've bought my previous jacket. Those are actually, automated retention-esque ways of building loyalty, because I will then think, wow, AllSaints really does care about my purchase. They care about how I look after my item. They're not just forcing me now to buy, a pair of jeans straight away. They're taking me along that helpful marketing journey. So that's why I definitely believe it's not always about finding a way to reward your customers, but actually how to impart some form of wisdom, insight, and information. And that in itself will build loyalty.
And I think, Adiola, that's why sort of like in that question, I mentioned the personalization strategy first, right? Before like almost the VIP stuff that we're working on is almost secondary to that. It is about relevancy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those are loyalty tactics within itself. So exactly. I would definitely say to our audience, don't think of the word loyalty as like, the Boots card. I might as well just buy my face wipes from Boots because I'll collect points. It's not always about points. It's about how do you build your own community? How do you find useful ways in empowering your subscriber base with your product offering, or helping them to optimize the products or the services that you've given them? And that will build loyalty. So I'm sure you only go to a certain provider because they look after you. And the way in which they look after you, you won't get somewhere else. And so therefore you stick with them. So it's a mindset thing.
So Adiola, would you say you could have loyalty without retention?
In a way, yes. If we're going to, be mavericks here, I think, because I felt as though what Mark was saying was retention is a hybrid of loyalty. It's just about segmentation. I feel like sometimes CRM, we do have our distinctive life cycles, and we do have our distinctive, definitions of things. But within retail, I think retention and loyalty can definitely be one and the same thing. It's just about who you decide to target and who you decide to spend the most amount of effort on. So it's like, Rasmus was saying, with those who are bracelet purchasers, if we want to kind of garner a relationship with people who purchase our bracelets, then yes, we're going to take them down a very specific journey, and we're going to kind of encompass them in everything to do with Pandora and everything to do with the chance. But we're also going to teach them how to look after their product. We're going to talk to them about what is wrong with me?
Sustainability. Sustainability is what you're looking for.
It's a hard word to say.
It's a hard word to say when you're hungry. So, and I definitely think that those are the added value marketing tips, or the added value marketing campaigns that really do then drive loyalty as well as retention. That's my spiel done.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. And Mark and Ras both touched on this in their answer. I like the notion of thinking about loyalty with regards to Disney, because and Mark touched on, look, I need to think about my product and my sale, and Ras has touched on it as well. If Ras can get somebody into a bracelet, then there's some obvious opportunities to build loyalty. Less so maybe if you're Mark and selling in fashion. Putting together a loyalty program for Disney would be this multi-layered, super complex thing, because you've got people that are loyal to the brand. Then you've got the brand of Disney. Then you got people that are loyal to the mouse. And you got people that are loyal to Star Wars, and people that are loyal to Marvel. And so you'd have different layers of loyalty based on people's interests, which just makes the whole thing a lot more complicated. What are you loyal to? So it's not just building loyalty, it's identifying what product, what brand, what division you're going to be loyal to, and making sure you build loyalty there.
Our biggest problem is, how do we make those that are fans of Marvel fans of Pandora, and not just, it happens to be Pandora who got to make that bracelet.
Hire me as your social media influencer. I'm free.
She's only wanting the gear to wear.
I love
that was it.
So welcome to Tuesday Pitch Day, everybody. Anybody else want to make a pitch?
Right.
I mean, Adiola's already trying to hit up for free Pandora and a free leather jacket.
She's already doing some of the email marketing. She also wants to do social. Really?
Jess, do you guys have some fancy swag you can send her as well?
Specifically.
Oh yeah, we
I'm
have.
set up.
Yeah, if you want any iterable swag, we have lots that we can send you too.
All right, let's try to get this back a little bit on track because the title of the event was talking about trends. So Jess, 2021 was mostly a year of recovery. People were trying to figure out what was going on, what had changed. 2020 was kind of a write-off. 2021 was almost like the 2020 do-over. And brands that mostly had transactional relationships with customers, that were based mainly on discounts and promotional offers, that found that they didn't have very much, they didn't leave themselves much room to, like, anywhere to grow. They to build on when behaviors and needs changed. How do you think the effects of the pandemic are going to play out in 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, so this is actually a really good question because it's one that we see come up often within our customer base. And, pandemic's not going to go away anytime soon, as we see. So the effects of the pandemic are going to play out well into 2022 and beyond. What we're really seeing is that, customers are wanting authenticity and they're wanting more flexibility than ever before. People want to interact with and invest with brands that, fit their lifestyle and their beliefs. And, they want the relationship to be a two-way street, or ultimately they're, going to move on to a competitor. And just like our personal relationships with, family and friends, it's important to remember that being authentic doesn't necessarily mean, you're going to be perfect and you're never going to make mistakes. Customers just want transparency. And, brands who are empathetic, they are quick to correct any of their wrongdoings, and those who show them appreciation. Throughout the pandemic, one of our customers actually that we work with, Fit TV, they're a virtual workout app. They saw an astounding year of growth in the online fitness industry. So they capitalized on this trend to build customer loyalty for the long haul. And one of the ways that they did this with Iterable was by leveraging our experiments functionality and Workflow Studio. And they did this to improve their new user onboarding. What they did was they ran a series of tests and then continued to optimize the content and the timing of their messages. And they saw that their trial to pay conversions increased to 65%.
That's cool.
So was this for new joiners?
Yes,
So
it was. Yeah.
Was there a strategy in place for their existing? So those that had already been adopters during the pandemic, did they struggle with finding a way to retain those customers, or was the objective more to focus on making sure that they were able to acquire new ones? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, so their primary objective was on acquiring new customers, which is kind of where they really struggled with, throughout the pandemic. So they built this new user onboarding flow specifically to help acquire new users.
Amazing.
Sorry, I had too many buttons going there at once. Well, first off, I mean, that's not the topic for today, but it's great to hear that the brands that brand was doing a lot of testing to optimize that journey. I do jump on board with Adiola's question. I once years and years and years ago was working with a brand that had so many new customers signing up. It was quite a disruptive brand in the gaming industry. That I went and said, hey, maybe we should work on retention. They're like, nah, we don't need to. I'm like, you will. Someday you will. Anyway, Kath, so we're talking about how do I it's obvious, right? Retention is I've sold a second thing or a third thing. But if you're a brand like, well, either the two brands we have with us, RAS, I don't know how often somebody has to buy for you to think call them retained, or how long it is between charm purchases before you say they've attrited. But Kath, how should we be measuring that?
Well, RAS actually mentioned that, one of the ways that they do it is by measuring customer lifetime value. And that's a really, really good metric, a solid metric to be using, because, again, you could be doing it. I know Waitrose goes and does it because they've got a 5 purchase program, I think. So first purchase, second, because they've worked out after you've actually bought X amount of times, you are now going to be loyal to them. So they're doing it on the times of, number of visits and number of purchases, but not every brand can do that, because, as Russ was saying, buying a charm is one thing, but then, buying a ring or a bracelet itself, they're different values. And so you can't always just put it down to the number. So customer lifetime value is really interesting. And I've got some really great stats about a new report that came out last year, because customer lifetime value was one of these things that we kind of bandy around, but in email marketing, we don't use as much as we should. E-commerce tend to, but email marketers, we kind of just leave it to the e-commerce guys and we don't consider it ourselves. And I think that's a real missed opportunity. So here, this report from the annual e-commerce leaders priorities survey report, they found that customers are now, or the brands are now measuring the lifetime value as being the top e-commerce metric. Conversion rate has fallen to second place. Customer acquisition cost to third. New traffic acquisition to fourth place, and average order value comes in fifth. So, hey, these guys are doing it. And even if you aren't e-commerce, it still, I think, behoves you to actually start looking at that customer lifetime value, because it will give you a lot of insights and ideas of where you should be aiming for and what you should be doing.
That tells you how to do it, or that tells you how you're performing at a macro level. Any thoughts from anybody on the panel about how I can target specific individuals? How do I know that they're ready for that next purchase, or how do I know that, they're more loyal than somebody else?
I always, guest of honor, Mark, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
We have, so we work with Emarsys on CRM, and they have some insight which tells us that of those customers that do purchase a second time, they purchase within 22 days of the first time. So we have created a program that basically aims to leverage customers within that window. But to be candid, it's not getting a lot of traction, right? And it's one of the reasons that we've started working with you guys, Kath, because it's one of, as you rightly pointed out, right, we've got this huge base of customers that buy once. It's in terms of volume and value, it is by far our biggest opportunity to flip those over into a second. So the platform tells us 22 days. Absolutely, I believe the platform. It seems quite soon, for me, but
yeah. It's funny because I was actually going to say, first of all, it's really good to understand the repurchase rate, but it's always good to have your own data team kind of qualify whether or not that's correct. But also, I would say Emarsys does it, I'm assuming, Emarsys would do it as an aggregation of all the total database, whereas your specific product lines, I can see myself freezing, sorry. Your specific product lines may have very different repurchase rates. So like your leather items might be a longer lead versus your dresses versus skirts versus your shoes, etc., etc. So drilling down that way and being a little bit more granular will help you build out those programs a lot more better. But understanding that is actually really key, because it allows you to kind of forward plan when the next optimum time would be to send your next campaign.
Yeah, it's a great point.
So Jess, what kind of insights does Iterable offer?
Yeah, you just read my mind, Skip. I was about to jump in there. So Iterable, the way that our customers use the tool to identify their loyal customers is we have an AI, part of our AI suite, a feature called Brand Affinity. And what Brand Affinity does is it identifies on a rolling weekly basis who your brand advocates are and who your most loyal user base are. And then, you can target your, the group that are maybe have a bit more negative sentiment towards your brand with the goal of moving them up to a positive or loyal brand affinity labels. So that's one way that they do it. And that's just part of our AI suite. We have send time optimization as well, which is going to send the message at the most optimal time for the users, which is also going to help prove engagement and loyalty. So yeah, that's one way. But I also think, doing a lot of your own kind of research and data to identify, because with each brand and with each kind of, user or brand loyalty may mean different for different companies. So being able to identify, your metrics on what makes a user loyal.
Also think that's really spot on, Jessica. We definitely I would say one of our biggest learnings is definitely also that you can't just count on CLV, right? If they just had a big purchase at the start and bought for a few friends as well, you'll just you'll think this is the loyalist person in the world. So what you really need to do is have an AI tool like the one you mentioned, right? Where, it looks into page views when recognized on web. It looks into the frequency between and the frequency in a year, how long between purchases. For we actually know for a fact that if the purchases are close to each other, that's actually something that will downgrade you for the 6 months CLV prediction, because it means, oh, you like Pandora for a short time, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you like us over time, right? And all of that, you just have to trust in the model sometimes, which is not very easy for a big retail company to always do, because we like to trust ourselves rather than the models. But the models are true, usually.
Raph, I can imagine you've also got an added layer of complexity, because say my wife might have bought her bracelet, but I'm the one buying the charms. Yeah. So it looks like she bought a bracelet and one charm and that's it. Yeah. And then you look at me and I'm buying all kinds of charms. I've never bought a bracelet.
Our default will actually be to expect that you are a gifter.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're more surprised if you're buying for yourself than if you're buying for someone else.
Well, I'm
Rasmus, it seems like they're all over it.
Mark's point's a good one, though. I did some work with a fashion brand, and they sold a lot, had a lot of individual transactions, and frequently there were people that bought quite regularly, but they tended to buy socks. Socks are not a real high value. This was quite a luxury brand, but even still, socks is not ever going to be the highest price point SKU you have, right? So it's also a matter of, do I want people buying a lot? Do I want people spending a lot? Rasmus, you hit the other nail on the head. There's I think I can tell this story because we all know him, but there's a fellow in the email industry, quite famous, Andrew Bonar, who spent a month living in Vegas after a conference a number of years ago. And he basically, because of some kind of weird admin thing, ended up putting quite a large restaurant bill onto his room. So the hotel thought he was a big spender, and so started comping him all kinds of stuff. He doesn't gamble, doesn't drink very much, and he's not really a big spender. But, because he had this one big transaction that came through his room bill, they were like, okay, excellent.
But that's when we want to start being very savvy with our lifecycle campaigns, about our automations, or even just delving into the data and identifying, okay, so someone is spending frequently, buying frequently, but it's still only small value, right? That doesn't mean that they're less valuable to us in value-wise, revenue-wise, but not in loyalty-wise. Okay, so what we want to do then is we want to try and use those automations, get to them and start doing some upselling and cross-selling and really leverage that loyalty so that it's going across other parts of the brand and not just with the socks or the undies or something like that, so that they start to buy every other things. And and that's fairly low-hanging fruit if these guys are pretty dedicated to buying all your socks.
And I would also argue that I know as email marketers, we always usually see our channel essentially in silo. It's quite an independent channel within itself, but linking in some of your other channels, so building that inspirational content by using what you have on social media, I think is another great way of lending itself to a form of helpful marketing and then building that loyalty. So there's like a very niche brand called Sunder Bay. And what they've done really well is they only have a very, it's almost like capsule. It's a very capsule everyday kind of pieces. So their product offering doesn't really turn over that much. It's quite static. But what they have done is inject their social media content to build upon that aspirational side of things. So where they may not have that many purchasers, so lots of prospects, they're able to use that content to kind of guide them along that journey to get them to convert and then show them different ways in which their particular products can be reused, recycled, how to upsell to different products. And, I spoke to their email marketing person just out of interest because I quite liked what they were doing. And I think it's, social and email are actually the two channels that fuse very well together, but I don't know if people do it enough, perhaps of time, perhaps it's to do with calendars, but if it's one brand working from, the same kind of calendar marketing framework, it could be something that, some of our audience might want to try and test later on to see if that's another way to help with loyalty as well as retention, as I would say, the two in the same, one in the same.
Mark, Ras, are you guys doing much collaboration across channels?
Yeah, so I can say that it's definitely something we're more working on it than we're doing it at this point. Like Mark also mentioned personalization earlier. That's how we brand cross-channel in Pandora. As we think it sort of goes along, or at least trying to catch two with one. So at this point, we're still starting to do this in what I would call truly automated collaborations between the channels. But tools like Iterable, for one, are really the kind of tools you need to bring into the hands of your marketeers to make sure that they're able to do this collaboration together. If you have 7 layers of developers for your CDP to activate a paid audience after reading a given engagement in an email or whatever, it will just never happen. Because truthfully, at least as far as I know, the real big uptake from actually having this cross-channel collaboration where it's automated, again, that's my world speaking, right? There's not like a ton of amazing use cases out there yet, right? This is still in some areas fairly new, at least to many companies in retail. So I'm still looking forward to seeing that, but yeah, it's definitely like one of the biggest buzzwords with us right now.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like you said, you guys are literally following through. So we're Holistic's doing some training, and the funny thing is that we're out of 4 sessions, training sessions. Only the last day are we actually training the email team.
Yeah.
The other 3 days, we're training everyone. We're training data scientists. We're training the social team. We're training, the acquisition team, all the rest of it, so that they understand how email works. They understand how they can fit in, how they can help, how they can leverage, and everything. So it's a really, really, fantastic thing to see. And the team that are on the course, they're excited and they're really, getting into it. And I can see lots of doors are opening as we're doing it. So, it's a great thing to do if you guys do want to make a start. It's a good way to start.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there's a big attribution part to it as well, right? now the channels are supposed to work together. Who gets credit?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so
that
true.
old chestnut.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The old last click attribution.
Yes. Well, it's always been favorable to email and Pandora, so I'm okay.
Oh, really? That's
our assumption, at
that's
least.
unique. Okay, I like that. What other changes, Mark, Ras, anybody else? But what other changes have you seen? After the pandemic. Let's go with after. Since as things are starting to open up again, I'm thinking it. I can imagine that both your brands, unless AllSaints really quickly came out with a line of Zoomware, and you had a Zoom charm. There's not during the lockdowns, there wasn't a lot of need for really either of your products.
Statement loungewear, Skip.
Statement loungewear.
Look, we saw, in 2020, we saw our retention repurchase rates increase, right? And that's purely because we had committed to a whole load of stock at the end of 2019 going into 2020, which we then couldn't sell. And so we're on sale through much of 2020, discounting deeper than we ever had before. And those were huge. That was a huge influence in pushing up our repurchase rate. In 2021, obviously, as we planned to go into it in 2020, still a lot of uncertainty. So we reduced our stock right down, and our proportion of sales that were sold at full price went up considerably. But what that did is it brought our repurchase rate right down. So 2020, because we were on sale the whole time, our repurchase rate was high. It's come right down again in 21 because we're selling a lot more full price. But for 2022, no one knows, right? But we're hoping that we're kind of moving into calmer, more predictable waters, and so we go back to our kind of like our core focuses of strategy in terms of relevancy. So all of the points around personalization, and the facet of that being some VIP activity in terms of recognizing and rewarding our best. But the other point about so relevancy is one core strategy, and then ease, customer experience, is the other. So all of the facets of the end-to-end customer experience to just make it quick and intuitive and easy for people. I'm a little bit more of the school of thought where fit is a really important aspect of fashion, right? People want to look good, and fit is absolutely key in terms of enabling people to look good. And there's many variables in terms of working with many manufacturers all around the world. There's different sizes, trying to communicate that in some sort of like easily digestible way in terms of size guides. It's really, really hard, right? And we know from our post-purchase surveys, and we are not alone here, right, that fit is a constant bugbear. So the point I'm trying to get to is that I personally think, in terms of retention, loyalty aspects, that you could probably do a lot more for retention and loyalty if we really try to have a good go at fit, perhaps rather than a tiered loyalty program or something like that. So it's relevancy and ease. We're going back to those kind of like key focuses in 22.
Well, and that's beneficial for you as well, right? Because if you can reduce returns,
I agree.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah. And a good example, sorry, I'm such a heavy shopper, but Revolve, they have a very good, they're a multi-branded e-commerce platform, but what they do really well is if they have some certain brands where the sizing is a bit different, when you go ahead to select your size, they either tell you to size up or size down, depending on how that product fits.
Wow.
And so I actually sized up. I was a bit upset, but it fitted perfectly. So it reduced the returns, right? So you might want to actually even check them out, because it's a great way, again, of again, building that loyalty, because I know they have my best interest in terms of making sure I make the right choice. I would more likely go back to them as a multi-branded site rather than direct to the brand itself.
Absolutely.
Fit, so important.
Okay, so we got some questions in from the audience. The first one is from Az Berman. Actually, interesting, a good mate of mine. He's curious, what's the panel's opinion on using user experiences such as gamification to encourage retention / loyalty?
I
guess. Go ahead, Russ.
We're personally yet to see. I am personally yet to see the great the sort of big growth that came out of something that I would assume is true gamification. But I sort of want to link it to Karina's question on reward programs, and I'm also guessing the many platforms that you can buy into today that helps you give points to your customers. Neither that and neither discounting, which is definitely something that we have also done a lot to keep people loyal at different times, is true loyalty. So what I would really use those reward programs for, which is so important, and that's also what some of these platforms will help you do, is make sure that it becomes an initiative for data capture, right? Because as this really applies to a lot of the points of this discussion already. If you try to make someone loyal, assuming that they're a user of Pandora, and then find out that they're actually the husband of that person giving the gift, it's really hard to communicate correctly if you're making that assumption incorrectly. But even after you know that this is in fact a gifter, if you only have their email address and the notion that it is potentially a gifter, it's still really hard to find out, what are the next steps that I can take to make this person loyal. So in terms of reward programs, in terms of the standard checkout and give us your email or give us more information about yourself, your birthday. Birthdays are big to Pandora as we're a gifter brand, right? And also the standard pop-up on your website, all this is very e-com driven. What I would advise...
Oh, you've gone silent.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
I'll just go 1 second back, both in terms of the points that you gave as part of reward programs, but just generally thinking what channel is responsible for data capture. Go a little broader than website, right? You can easily set up an SMS that asks people to give a piece of information in return of points in a reward program. You can very soon dynamic emails will be a fact, right? Where you can actually ask people for rich field information about themselves. And if you really make that cross-channel, then I think you'll be in a perfect place to understand exactly what people need to become loyal to you. And that's really, I think, one of the biggest epiphanies for us in the past year.
That's really interesting. I think the points piece, Mark, you hit on it right when we were getting started, is, for an airline, they can give, based on your point status, you can give a loyal customer priority boarding. Costs you nothing as an airline. For an airline, you can upgrade somebody from economy plus up to premium, up to business. If the seat's empty, you've lost nothing. And you don't do that until you know you haven't sold the seat. Very different if you're selling a charm or a leather jacket. Because once you start discounting and giving away points, and X number of points gets you a free whatever, but then you're just eroding margin, right?
And I'd say that what the airline is doing wrong is they're not asking you for more information. They're not asking you to allow them to know you better for giving you that seat, even though the consumer will probably see that as a completely free trade for something as great as an upgrade on an airline, right? Which is a really good point. Great. And so, I think reward programs and discounts and all this stuff that we very often consider loyalty or loyalty driving, you need to see that as the engine for getting you the information that can actually enable you to make people truly non-discount based loyal, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And
I give up my firstborn to get a business class seat. So, if there are any airlines listening, send me that platinum card, and you can have the 16-year-old. That's a win-win.
So now you're really talking about being a true marketer and understanding the consumers and understanding what makes us happy, what we react to. So Ras mentions, about asking for more information in return for. So that's reciprocity. Okay. And then you've got other things that you can be doing with them as well. And just understanding that they have got certain triggers. But again, you don't want to be using it to manipulate, obviously, behavioral science and psychology. You want to be helping them to make a decision and do what Mark was saying, make it easy for them to actually be doing, having a decision rather than manipulating them at all. But yeah, I think a lot of this comes down to us understanding that with the loyalty, it is about, yes, definitely using personalization, definitely using recommendation, using all the data that we understand about them. But also it could be something as simple as with your top spenders who are incredibly loyal to you, maybe they don't want anything because they're going to be spending with you anyhow. Maybe all they want is recognition. Hey, you're our top spender. Well, you're one of our top spenders. We really value you, blah, 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 and maybe it will be a come to the, open night of our new range or something like that and drink some champagne. So it would just be that kind of a little reward, so recognition and understanding how we are as humans appreciate that goes a long way too. So it doesn't always have to be.
No, I think that kind of helps with the sort of it's gamification in another way, because the other thing we have to remember is that, without throwing anybody under a bus, everybody on this call or everybody on this panel is of an age, and there are a lot of consumers that are younger than us who are interested in other things and
He's
other
not wrong.
incentives.
Because I was like gamification, but then I wouldn't be the demographic that would appreciate the level of effort that goes into making me engaged. So yeah, I would use gamification more for product launches. I think even Pandora had something quite similar with the launch of Marvel on the website, and it was, there was a game. I wanted to play it, but my internet connection is crap.
No, but that works perfectly into my point from before, because what you can do as part of that game is give us your marketing consent, tell us a little bit about yourself, and participate in a competition where you'll have more tickets if you actually do win the game, right? So again, and data capture. Yeah, no, it's great. And I think even in ways of building loyalty, so I know I'm throwing out so many brands, but it's good for you guys to kind of be able to go away and see these examples. So PlusNet, I don't know if anyone is with PlusNet. I want to change because this broadband is crap, but they have a really good game.
So if there are any broadband companies that would like to help Adiola out, for those keeping score, we're looking for a leather jacket, a Pandora bracelet.
I want to be an influencer, and I need new broadband. But to my point, they have a fantastic game where you can win perks and prizes and additional bundles to your broadband package by making the perfect cuppa. It's all tied into their whole brand because they're Northern and they're super friendly. So you make the perfect cuppa, and if you win, you get entered to the prize draw. And every single time I'm trying to make that perfect bloody cuppa, and it's never right. And I think I'm only a customer because I really want to nail that game. So I think there are ways in which I forget that the connection is so rubbish. Like, see, I'm freezing now. The games keep me alive. So it's how you use them. I hope that was helpful.
But again, I think you just have to realize what you're getting out of it, right? No one goes to Pandora to play games. They would have seriously misinterpreted the brand if they do. So what, that long-term experience, is that not too far away from a jewelry retailer for it to build on top of your sense of loyalty? I would at least argue that, whereas Pandora probably wouldn't. So you have to sort of see, using gamification, what is it that you get what is that you get out of it that you can actually use for creating loyalty in your core segment of what you do.
Yeah, I think with gamification too, you have to be careful that you're not just making it too transactional or seem too transactional come off to the user, because with building loyalty, you want to build that two-way relationship with them, right? And build that connection with them on a deeper personal level. I think gamification is really great for building engagement, like everyone has said, but engagement doesn't necessarily translate into loyalty.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And going back to Mark's point, you could make it completely non-transactional as well, right? I mean, one of my favorite games, while we're on the topic of gamification, is the Chrome dinosaur game, right? Which you only get when your internet connection is off. But your internet dies, and you're like, well, I'll do this, and hopefully it'll come back. So it fills the time. It actually is useful because it kind of reduces your level of frustration that your internet is just died. So Adiola, I would suggest you switch to Chrome as well, just so you got that.
Thank you.
That's something to fill your time with.
Yeah, exactly. But we've kind of danced around it. Kath touched on it specifically. But we can. We hit on it really early on with when we were talking about don't let the customers do what they want to do. We want them to do what the marketers want them to do. That's not exactly what we meant, but that's kind of how it came out. So, the other side of this in terms of loyalty is building an emotional connection with a customer. And, whether it's by adding services, as Mark said, or Ras, as you said, identifying that this person is a gifter and maybe working to help with them to find out what gifting opportunities were coming up and making sure they don't forget. And Jess, I know you guys talk a lot about emotional marketing. How should we be thinking about emotional marketing and building long-term loyalty?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, I mean, with emotional marketing, you want to connect to each of your customers' feelings rather than just, like I said, coming off as transactional and trying to sell them a product or service. You want, to connect things your customers want and need, and on a deeper, more personal level. And that's really where that deep personalization comes in as well. Brands, I see that brands that relate to customers' emotions is what truly inspires long-term loyalty and increases customer lifetime value. So, how do you exactly leverage emotional marketing, though, is a question to build long-term loyalty. You need to, develop a way to understand how customers feel about your brand in real time and across channels as well is really important. And with any relationship, the connection between a consumer and a brand, that's going to evolve over time. Maybe, you're going to have more rational considerations when a consumer is first engaging with your brand, like price or promotions may come into play there. And then over time, as the relationship starts to develop more, then that's when you develop more of those emotional responses, and they may form an attachment to your brand, feel shared values with you. So yeah, consumers, they're wanting to be heard by brands. We've seen that 70% of consumers say that a brand relationship includes providing feedback, and the majority of that 70% expect that feedback to drive brands to responsive action. So there's kind of three things that brands should be looking at, really, emotional factors for a consumer, and their trustworthiness, integrity, and honesty. And these three things should be the driving force behind all of your communications to consumers. And you want to be thoughtful and respectful too with, all of the data that you're collecting on consumers. You want to be thoughtful with this so that you can sustain your consumer relationships.
Cool. What if my brand is boring?
What if your brain is boring?
Not my brain. I mean, my brain is probably boring too. That's a conversation for a different webinar. What's my brand? Brand is boring.
Your brand is boring. Okay, gotcha.
And this is for anybody. I mean, I don't know if
Yeah,
it's on the spot.
you still need to be authentic. You still,
Yeah.
I think that again, there was a lot of studies that were done during the pandemic, right? And at Holistic, we've been talking about helpful marketing now for many, 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 many years, because we do believe that if you help your marketer, if you help the consumer to achieve their objectives, then you end up achieving yours, right? And so that then turns the whole conversation into not into brand-centric marketing, but into customer-centric marketing, because you're focusing and thinking about them, okay? So if we start to do that, then added to that, you also need to have that authenticity. Now, during the pandemic, there was lots of research that was done, and they were all coming in finding out, so actually what the consumers want is the brands to be authentic, not to be ripping them off over, or sort of just trying to do this brand-led, brand-centric sell. It's trying to help them. So the consumers are actually voicing that they want the brands to be helpful and authentic. Now, this is I think is the basis of what we should be doing as marketers for our brands and to help our consumers. So, and I think this is one of the reasons why email is such an amazing channel, is because we do evolve. So we evolve. A lot of people think that we're evolving because we have got such amazing tech, and the tech is perpetually evolving. And I agree that is one of the reasons, but I also believe that we are evolving because we do listen to the consumer, and we evolve in response to the consumer's requirements of us. And that's why email is one of the most popular channels with consumers, and that's why they look to us. And also because we are, as I keep saying, we're a push channel, so that enables us to actually get lots of insights and everything. So I think if anyone's going to be leading the way, besides the actual website itself, and social definitely as well, we have to make sure that we are authentic, that we are actually just helping, being customer focused. Sorry, that was my little bit of a rant, but just picking up with what the question was asking.
Excellent. Any last thoughts from anybody?
I think
Go ahead, Mark.
Just a very small example, Kath, of trying to be helpful, right? So our abandoned browse program, and you see a lot of abandoned browse programs do this. They kind of like just regurgitate, what the customer has just looked at. But the guys in my team, when we were building ours, were great exercise, right? I mean, it's not rocket science, but it was a really great exercise, putting themselves in the position of the customer, browsing product, shopping, and come to the conclusion that the customer is, maybe they've got something specific that they're looking for, but they basically come up with a concept of the customer's problem is they're looking for something new. They're looking for inspiration. So they then created the Abandoned Browse program that communicates a lot more around, are you looking for something new? Here's some inspiration. Yes, we show them what they've just looked at, but we also show them I think it's like a 6-grid of AI recommended product based on their historical browse history. So it's being much more helpful, right? It's not just this is what you looked at an hour ago. It's, are you looking for something new? Here's what you did look at, but there's lots more inspiration here as well.
Yeah, that's great. Definitely.
Excellent.
Yeah, and my final thought, because I know we're running out of time, and I know I've been chucking out a lot of brands, but another fantastic way
Hang on, everybody. Adiola's going to pitch for something free. Hang on. All right, go ahead. Go ahead. Just as
Mark had mentioned the abandoned browse, I think also using your returns as an opportunity to add that value. So Net-a-Porter, I returned a top and it wasn't right, but they sent me an email, a follow-up email, apologizing that wasn't right, and then had subsequent items that look quite similar in the same kind of color range that might be of interest to me. And I think those little touches are a great way of building loyalty, of having that retention. So using all of your customer touch points that you currently have, and as Mark says, optimizing them, going beyond the mark of just doing the standard out of the box, but really thinking about how can you be of use to the customer, what would be their driving motivations. I think then you start to build a loyal and retained base without as much effort as you would think.
Perfect. Perfect. And we're gonna, and you didn't pitch for anything free. Well done.
I know, right?
That's a great place for us to wrap up.
I know. I'm hungry, Mark.
That's a great place for us to wrap up.
The energy is waning now.
So thank you, everybody. Folks, you've heard some great stuff from our panelists today, but if you're wondering how you can put some of these discussions into practice, Iterable are offering all attendees a free customer experience workshop with their team of experts to help your team dive into the challenges and opportunities for building a best-in-class customer loyalty strategy. It's no frills. It's not too onerous. It's just 30 minutes of your time to talk through your use cases and how you can take your customer experience strategy to the next level. With that said, please join me in thanking Holistic Email Marketing and Iterable for putting on today's webinar. Such a great bit of content. Thank you also to all of our speakers. You've all been brilliant. Mark, Rasmus, Jess, Adiola, Kath. I'm not going to thank myself. That'd be weird. Don't forget, one of you will win the Kindle version of Kath's book. And don't worry, you will be contacted tomorrow on social media, and we'll be in touch with a download code. And with that, I want to thank all of you for taking your time to spend your time with us today. We hope you've gotten some out of it. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. We've had a great time here today. Until we catch up again, be safe and make good choices.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.